3.9 Contracciones al y del. In English, we have contractions also. For example, is not can be contracted into isn't. It's squeezed together and shortened. You are can be contracted to your. In Espanol, there are two important contractions that we need to learn about in this chapter. The first is a. It means to. Make a note. A means to. For example, él va a el cuarto. He's going to the room. Or voy a la tienda. I'm going to the store. In these examples, a means to. However, right here you see there are two vowels right next to each other, a and el. And in Spanish, to help the pronunciation of this flow much better, we contract a and el into al. So make note that anytime a and el are next to each other, they're going to contract into al. And it's much easier to pronounce. It flows nicely. Él va al cuarto. And a lot of times in Spanish, vowel sounds are connected anyway. So when you say this a little faster, these two vowels will kind of blend together. Even though we're not going to contract them, they'll blend like this. Él va al cuarto. He goes to the room. And down here, a and la will not contract because there is no vowel in between them that can be smushed together. Another important use of the word a in Spanish is when we are talking about a person. We call it the a personal, or the personal a. In this sentence here, we say busco a el profe. We're looking for the professor. In Espanol, we add an a because the thing we're looking for is a person. And you do this anytime a person is the thing that you are looking for or speaking to or listening to. And just as before, a and el are going to contract. So what would this sentence be? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Busco al profe. Down here, the second example, invitamos, means we invite. We have to include this personal a because we are inviting people. Even though when we translate it, it sounds kind of strange, we invite to the friends, we would just translate it as we invite the friends. But because of this rule in Spanish, we need to include the personal a. Another important contraction in Español is when we see de and el next to each other. Hopefully you remember that de means from, and it can also mean of. So in this sentence here, es el libro de el profesor, we're saying it's the book of the professor, or the professor's book. Since we've got these two vowel sounds right next to each other, we're going to smush it together and come up with del. So make a note that anytime you see de and el next to each other in a sentence, they need to be contracted. Del. In this example down here, el profe de la clase es alto, we don't need to contract these two words because there aren't two vowels next to each other. So this would stay the same. Now I'll give you a moment to practice. Try these 5, putting the correct form of a or de and the definite article. So for example, in the blank, you're going to be putting al or a la or del or de la or de los or de las. Pause the video, see how you do, and then when you restart the video, I will give you the answers. Okay, number one. El alumno habla del curso. The student talks of the course. In this case, it means about the course. It wouldn't make sense to say the student talks to the course, so we don't need to put a. Número dos. Yo escucho al profesor. I'm talking to the professor. Now, technically, it would also make sense if we said yo escucho del profesor. I'm hearing about the professor or of the professor, but in common sense and in this practice, we'll use al because it would make most sense for it to be I'm talking to the professor. Número tres. Mis amigos van al café. My friends go to the cafe. Now this ends in an E, so it might have been difficult for you to know whether it was masculine or feminine, but if you remembered that café, meaning the cafe, is masculine, you would have put al. Número cuatro. El perro está delante del garaje. The dog is behind the garage. The phrase that we've learned in vocabulary, delante de, becomes delante del when the word after it is masculine. Número cinco. Nosotros hablamos clase. It could be we talk to the class or about the class. And since la clase is feminine, we don't need to contract.